All right, so after an exciting week one, we have some bit winners and we have some losers of the week. So, Sterling, give me one of your winners for the opening week of the NFL season.
One of the winners, which surprised me, was the New York Giants. And not just the New York Giants alone, but as a team, they really came together. They rallied against a former, number one in the AFC last year in the Tennessee Titans, and they managed to come back and win it. Especially, head coach, Saquon Barkley. I mean, he had a phenomenal game. Came out sort of did exactly what he told everybody he was going to do. He said, "Watch me," and he just tore it up. He had over 100 yards, had a big 2 point conversion at the end of the game, which head coach decided first time that being there in Brian Dabo, and he decided to go for two, win the game instead of tie it, and it paid off. And the New York Giants fans have not had something to cheer about like this in week one in quite a long time.
Yeah, and honestly, to go out there and beat the Titans, which was one of those games that you and I just kind of looked at and we're like, it's a Titan, it's a Titans win no matter what happens. It wasn't kind of in that situation of a gray area. Like this is huge for the Giants because obviously Brian Dabble, new head coach, first time head coach, obviously was the offensive coordinator for Josh Allen for the last couple of seasons. And you know what, Saquon Barkley, he performed, man. 164 rushing yards off of 18 attempts, rushing touchdown, 6 reception yards. Dude was yeah, it was a good game for him. And for the Giants to be competitive and to be taken seriously this year, Saquon Barkley needs to have these types of games because again, yeah, the Giants won, but Daniel Jones is still really not, in my opinion, the guy. And so if you want those games to be won, Saquon Barkley has to be a big factor. But our first loser is gonna be the Cowboys, in my opinion. Obviously, they played a horrible, horrible game on Sunday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like this was one of those games where you're like, we know the Cowboys what they could potentially look like, but this is going to be a true test to see really, which team is going to be better. And it's like if the Cowboys want to be taken seriously this year, they have to put up, they don't necessarily have to beat Tampa Bay, but they have to be, putting up a good game, and it wasn't a good game. And the fact that Dak Prescott, Jerry Jones came out this morning and said, it looks better than what it expect. We could see him in 4 weeks, but that's Jerry Jones saying something, and a lot of the experts are saying 6 to 8 weeks. Which, if you're a Cowboys fan, you see that that's scary.
Yeah, that's big for sure. And if it was his non-throwing hand, then I would say 4 weeks is very likely. But being that this is his throwing hand and his thumb, the I don't see it happening. Yes, we've seen Dak Prescott have godly healing powers where he comes back from these injuries very quickly, very often. So maybe 6 weeks out we could see him back, but the Cowboys don't have a whole lot of other options at that quarterback position right now, and they could be looking at going 0-6 in this stretch, which you're not going to recover from that in a tough division in the NFC East right now, where all three of the other teams won yet this weekend.
So going over to our winners category, the next winner that we discussed and have on our list is Patrick Mahomes. Like man, like there was question marks to see like how good this offense would be. Obviously, they got rid of Tyreek Hill, Patrick Mahomes' number one weapon, outside of Travis Kelsey, and it just kind of felt like the team didn't necessarily get better on offense. They definitely got a little bit worse taking away Tyreek Hill, but uh, stat line didn't show that. Patrick Mahomes, 76 or 77% realistically, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Easy, easy win for the Chiefs over what people expected to be a lot tougher of an Arizona Cardinals. But yeah, that was just a monster day for Patrick Mahomes. And without a doubt, that should silence people questioning the Chiefs offense.
It should, especially since he wasn't one dimensional either. He spread the ball around really well, got all of his new receivers involved. Clyde Edwards Hilaire, I believe, had 2 receiving touchdowns. Travis Kelsey had a monster game, 121 yards, I believe, and a touchdown. Like he moved the ball around. He looked comfortable in there. He looked like he didn't even realize Tyreek Hill was gone, which is scary for that AFC West, because we thought it was going to be a little bit more of a middling division where with all the teams being hyper friggin' competitive. But now the Chiefs have just said, no, you guys moved up to here, but we're still way up here, So you figure it out with the rest of you, because that just a massive game for them. So moving over to one of our other losers, we have my Pittsburgh Steelers here. They had an interesting game. It was a tough divisional battle. Their defense just stood on their head and kept them in the game the whole way, and they managed to pull it a win. The reason we have them here as a loser is because it felt like by the end of the game they lost half the team to injuries.
Like
And
the defensive guys too, the ones that were making the play and keeping them in that game.
right, like the only defensive guy making plays that didn't really seem to get hurt was Minkah Fitzpatrick. Beyond that, we saw TJ Watt go out with what looks to be a bad injury. Like immediately he was looking at the sideline and telling guys like, I tore my pec. Like he could feel that's what happened, and that's just not a good injury. There was some maybe good news that it's only a partial tear, which means he could be back by the end of October. But that's very wishful thinking, I think. I think that would be silly of him in setting himself up for further injury if he were to push that at this point. I haven't gotten any updates on any of the other injuries, because we saw Cam Hayward go down for a period, Alex Highsmith, Levi Wallace, just a number of guys on the defensive side. And then the powerhouse on offense as well in Najee Harris, went down, and he was writhing in pain, holding on to that knee, that foot, which we know he's been dealing with a foot injury here through the preseason and training camp. So the hope is maybe that's just a re-aggravation of that injury. Maybe sit him or monitor his snaps for a couple of weeks, and he'll be good to go. But we don't know for sure what's going on there.
So going back to our final winner of the week, it has to be the Monday night winner, the Seattle Seahawks, Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, beating what is our final loser of the week, which is the Denver Broncos, Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett. Like, you and I looked at this game and said it's an easy win for the Broncos. The Broncos have a better roster up and down, no questions about it. Nathaniel Hackett, as an offensive coordinator for Green Bay, he did good work. Obviously, he wasn't the play caller in Green Bay because that was up to Matt LaFleur, but you're looking at it going like Nathaniel Hackett is done work with Aaron Rodgers. Now he's getting Russell Wilson in a team that has a ton of weapons. And what happened at the end of that game of when like he was just like, I'm just gonna call my 2 timeouts just to extend this and make this even longer. This is like, you lost. Take it as a gracious host and be like, you know what, we lost. Here we go. You don't need to drag it out. The players probably didn't like it. They're like, let's just get this over with. The fans, you could hear the booing. Oh my god! But yeah, the fact that Russell Wilson walked in there, got booed. Did he play good? Played okay. Like I wouldn't. It wasn't necessarily the same as what we saw from Trubisky, where he didn't play bad, but it was kind of forgettable. Like he played good, but for him to go in there in Seattle, lose to his former head coach and his backup and the team that he ultimately left, not a good look. But Seattle, man.
He's the one guy that you and I sort of disagree on with the Broncos being the losers. I agree. They're a big loser this week, but I think Wilson did a good job, and had Nathaniel Hackett put the ball into his hands at the end of the game, we'd be talking a different story right now, because I think Russell Wilson would have won. Much like those 2 fumbles that were lost were not on him. He drove the ball down the field, and they should have gotten points. Like they only got a 6 out of a total of 28 points they could have gotten in the red zone, which is just awful. You cannot win games that way.
Yeah, totally agree. But that is it for today. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button and follow us for more weekly content and the podcast during the week.